I have a lot of pain in my heart, and I deal with it differently on different days. Sometimes I pack it down and compartmentalize it. Sometimes it swells up on me. Sometimes I sit in the middle of it. You could say that my problem is centered in Ferguson, Missouri. Michael Brown, another unarmed African-American man, was shot dead by police. But my sorrow really flows from the reality that Ferguson, Missouri represents all of America. And I know that many of you are deeply affected by what has happened in Ferguson and what's happening around the United States. There are so many challenges. African-American young men all around the country are being shot by lots of different people, including African-American men. We have, as a nation, more people in prison than any country in the world. And African-American young men are sent to jail at disproportionately high rates. For example, even though whites use and sell drugs at the same percentages as blacks, blacks are in prison percentage-wise way more. And education and employment and voting rights are slanted against poor and folks of color. Abuse of women by brown, yellow, red, pink, white men is happening at alarming rates. CNN said that 25% of women in America have been the victims of domestic violence. Dr. King, one of the greatest Americans, assessed America's problems as having a primary triangle: racism, poverty, militarism. And that triad is still playing out in Ferguson and in many aspects of our nation. But then there are other problems that don't fit within that. And I know that we look at these problems from different perspectives with different opinions, but many of us do lament and feel powerless about these disconnections and pains. These are some of the central reasons why our mission statement at the Unitarian Society of Germantown begins with three important words: building beloved community. This is the theme of our month, building beloved community. We're sharing with each other what it means to us. Dr. King spoke here. We have headquarters on Dr. King Day where about 500 people work on projects in the greater community, and he continues to grow in his influence on us, thankfully. The King Center in Atlanta provides many important historical documents on King, and some of them provide the historical context for our congregational mission statement. When Dr. King talked about beloved community, he was talking about a global vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. Poverty, hunger, and homelessness will not be tolerated because international standards of decency will not allow. Love and trust will triumph over fear and hatred. And we here, over the decades, as we approach our 150th anniversary, have said, yes, that describes us and who we are trying to become. And sadly, we witness so many difficult examples of beloved community not being lived out in our country. And one of them that I lift up all the time is study after study shows that the number of meaningful friendships people have in their lives is at an all-time low. Counterintuitive reality in our Facebook world of friends. So when stuff like that is in our radar, hope can dim. And at those times, it's best to begin focusing at the local level. So we come together, and among the things we do in trying to live out our mission statement is highlight good news. And the reality is, there is tons of it. There are tons of beautiful, wonderful, impressive, courageous things happening in the world. And we see them all the time. We come together to share about them. And going from the reading, there is actually a revolution in the world going on that can help us greatly in achieving our mission. It is a revolution in consciousness. It's a phrase that's, I think, been used a lot over the course of history and might sound a little cliche, but it is truly a revolution in consciousness. As David Brooks writes, in recent years, geneticists, neuroscientists, psychologists, sociologists, economists, anthropologists, he forgets to mention ministers, have made great strides in understanding the basic building blocks of human flourishing. A core finding of their work is that we humans are not primarily the products of conscious thinking. We are primarily the products of thinking that happens below the level of consciousness. The inner mind, which controls us, hungers for harmony and connection. Think about this. Hear these words. Those moments when self-consciousness fades away and a person is lost in a challenge or a cause or the love of another or the love of life. That's what drives us. And starting around 400 years ago, when humans discovered and emphasized the vital use of our cognitive skills, we overreached, not knowing any better. Until recently, we overemphasized the role of the rational mind. And if you're new to Unitarianism, we were a part of that overemphasis, for sure, with all the best intentions. Brooks says that the new research indicates human beings are like spiritual grand central stations. We are junctions where millions of sensations, emotions, and signals interpenetrate every second. These interactions are predominantly subconscious. So now, in addition to saying, I think, therefore I am, it's also important to say, I interact with others, therefore I am. We're actually very contagious in how we interact with each other, in what we say and do, and actually in what we feel. Many of us love Dr. Dan Gottlieb, who runs a great show on National Public Radio called Voices in the Family. He's a hero. He's a paraplegic who keeps going on and doing amazing work. He's done multiple shows on emotional contagiousness. One of them hosted 3 experts, all female experts in the field of child psychiatry. And the 3 experts outlined studies which demonstrate how parents and children have emotional synchrony. I didn't know this word. I thought the only word was synchronicity, but it's between people, synchrony. One example, optimally, a parent and a child match up well with a feeling that all is well in the world. That's when healthy synchrony is happening. That's when blessings are flowing also, because not everybody has everything going well in the world. Example. A parent brings a child to the doctor's office. You see these people dressed in their garb, these machines and tools, and the child doesn't know, what's going to happen now. And ultimately, the child looks to the parent for what to think, feel, and do. And they have realized that the child is actually reading the adult's physiology. So they've hooked up heart monitors to both parties, and not only is it important what the adult says and does, but the child is reading pulse and heartbeat and knows if nervousness is there or not. Example. A 7-year-old is nervous because he doesn't want to go to dance class. He's had bad experiences in the past. And the parent is nervous that the child is going to the dance class because they've had bad experiences. And the boy says, "Dad, you're nervous." And yes, the boy knows, yes, you're nervous. So what do you do with that? Maybe you can both say, yeah, well, I'm nervous, you're nervous. And maybe the adult can say, but honey, I'm also feeling curious or a little excited because maybe today's going to be something special. How about that? And then that can sink back. And these are things we know, but there's just more studies confirming how the body, minds, and spirits sync up. Touch is one way that children pick up on stress or calm from adults, and the opposite is true as well. This is happening right here, right now, over here with Katie and Elliot Otto. But what happens also, if a parent is stressed out, you can hold your child and get calmed down. It can go both ways. The child is crying, you can hug and calm that child down. We know these things. Happens with pets, cats, dogs, horses. Happens below. There are all kinds of studies of how voices sync up in conversation. Scientists have watched 100 hours of Larry King and seen how, as the minutes click by in the show, the voices sync up in cadence, speed, volume, voice tone. A lot of studies. The person who is more deferring to the authority, whatever that means in whatever social setting, adjusts to speak in the manner proper to that person. Reading this research shows me how the development of all these fields highlights the value of healthy religious community. Because healthy religion must involve bringing people together to cultivate our best selves in respectful manners together. And then with those mutually beneficial interactions going on, we empower ourselves to go out and improve the world. And it's all contagious. We all have synchrony that has to be coordinated at some level, because if it's just left to chaos or to poor intentions, it goes another way. We come together in safe and constructive environments like church because what the scientists call attunement happens so much. Here we practice with each other, we sing together, we do small groups together, we greet one another. You try and do it respectfully at church because that's practice. And you do it so well, I learn from you. And then I can go out tomorrow and do it with my neighbor better than I would have if I had just stayed by myself. Two guys named Christakis and Fowler wrote a book called Connected. And they say there's bad news and good news, if you want to look at it this way. As individual human beings, we have less power over what we say, think, and do than we realize. Maybe that's the bad news. But conversely, we have more influence over others than we realize. I find that very interesting to think about. When we talk to one another with compassion and respect, we grow in those capacities for going on to the next relationship. Stress, all around us in these cultures in which we operate. We absorb it. That's a reality. So what do you do with that reality? We can recognize it's helpful. It allows the caveman to not be eaten by the saber-toothed tiger, so you don't want to be just a totally stress-free human being. But you also don't want to just be in that chronic fight or flight mode, which disables you, de-energizes you. It reduces your cognitive abilities if you're just stressed out all the time. You might be someone who grew up in a family that was constantly overstressed, and you're trying to get out of those cycles of anxiety. When we come here, we can mindfully care for ourselves, and we can all slow down once in a while. Take a breath. Admit that many, if not most of us, are running around at least a little bit crazy most of the time. I'm not using that term clinically, but I think most of us feel crazy. And just celebrate that we are breathing and do it together. When we just sit and meditate on a question together, we affect each other in positive ways. When we hear the choir, they affect us. When we sing together, we have more influence over others than we think. Every year we help families who are struggling to rebuild their homes that they're living in. Right now we have a letter up from Mr. Petrie, whose house we helped to rebuild. He's got pictures of his floor that we rebuilt with him, and he loves it. And he thinks of us when he is in his new, safer, more comfortable home. That's a ripple. Are there people in your life who you want to bring to the next social justice project of ours? We're going to pass Bill 300 this year as the people of Pennsylvania. We're going to make it illegal for gay people to be fired for being gay. We're going to ripple. Bring in somebody who wants to make a good ripple and help us pass 300. We're going to have a block party rally on Germantown Avenue the last Saturday of September to fight the mass incarceration industry in our state and in our nation and trying to lift up schools. We're going to ripple. We're going to be contagious for positive. Come on out. Be a part of it. We're going to keep telling stories how when people rise up like they have around Ferguson, the Attorney General listened. A serious investigation is going on of the man who killed Michael Brown, but also of the entire police department over the last years. All police departments should be held accountable, as should other institutions. These are Ray Rice domestic abuse scandal is an opportunity. You know how many people watch the NFL? I think more than like any show in America. A lot of people now are paying attention to domestic abuse and saying it's unacceptable, it's a ripple, it's an opportunity. In beloved community, we examine our lives with kindness. Dr. Gottlieb tells the story of taking an 8-week class on mindfulness, and in the class he made friends with a fellow student who was terminally ill with cancer. At one point, Dan asked the woman, if you don't mind my asking, why are you prioritizing taking this class now, given how precious and potentially little time you have left? And the woman answered, all my life I have lived somewhere else from where I was. And now I want to live the rest of my life where I am. None of us know for sure how long we're going to live. But isn't it true that deep down in our guts, every single one of us wants to be fully alive and present to this moment right now? I believe we do desire for that, and I believe we know in our hearts that when we come together, we help each other to see what is to be seen and to touch what is to be touched, and to hear what is. It's a big deal. We're building beloved community to help each other claim our birthright by dropping into ourselves and paying attention to what is. Together, we recognize our wholeness is right now. Blessings be. Amen.